Michaela, how is your training different in your 60s in comparison to when you're in your 20s or 30s?
So when I was in my 20s and 30s, I was mostly running, so endurance running. So I would run probably an hour to 2 hours a day, like 6 days a week. And then I would go in the gym and just sort of do upper body because I didn't know a lot about weightlifting. And back then it was, that was many years ago. I don't want to say how many, I guess 30 years ago. And so back then, women kind of stayed away from heavy weights. And any weightlifting that you did do was, you know, really like probably 20, 15 to 20 reps and light weights. And so and I didn't think I needed to work my legs at all because I'm a runner. I don't need to work my legs. So it was all upper body. And now I think back and I think how kind of silly that was because the lower body would have really helped me with my running. But at the time I just kind of wanted to have a look, a certain look, which I find a lot of women do kind of train that way. We want glutes and we want nice arms and, it's not, you're kind of worried about your quads and, overbuilding certain areas. So I was kind of afraid of weightlifting. And now I find, now that I'm older and I became a trainer, and it's funny because when I first wanted to become a trainer, I wanted to become a running coach. So I was like, well, I run. That's what I do. I want to be a running coach. And I remember the teacher in the college I went to, he was like, he's a strength and conditioning coach. And he was like, well, why do you want to do that? You should, you should be doing this. You should be doing hypertrophy training and strength training. And I really didn't like it that much. And now that's like exclusively all I do pretty much. I still run, but very little, probably 20% of my training is running.
So, how did you convince yourself to get into strength training as opposed to just sticking with running?
I just fell in love with it after a while once I started doing it really for real, like lifting heavier weights and really kind of and seeing the effect it had on my body was really quite surprising because I always thought that I thought what a lot of women still think, which is that weights will make you bulky, make you look, sort of chunkier. And I have an athletic body anyway, and I build muscle quite easily. And so I was really kind of afraid of that. My dad was a professional athlete, and he always said, you have a body like mine, and don't lift weights, you'll get really big. and and I absorbed that and I believed that, and so it took some reprogramming for me to understand that, oh, okay, it's okay to lift weights and it's actually going to benefit you and give you, the look that long kind of toned look that women want.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the benefits conversation because not only is it important for your body, but it's in the way that we look in the aesthetics realm, where
Yeah.
often yes, do women do think, well, I'll get bulky or it'll make me look like a man. I'm going
Yeah.
to look too buff, which is, what I wish I could say, from lifting weights and what basically everyone, well, mostly men, like we try to do that on a day-to-day basis and, are often more unsuccessful than successful. So like if we can't do it and we have like so much more testosterone,
Yeah.
it's much more challenging for women, though not impossible. But it's definitely a worthy venture. And I was looking at the research, and basically, if someone does nothing to counteract it after the age of 30, we lose around 3 to 8% of our muscle mass, and that's one of the benefits that I wanted to talk about. So, how do you feel? Because you talked about the look that you were developing. How did you feel after? Did you feel different straight away, or did you not feel different? Did it take a while to kick in?
So I started putting on weight like I guess from probably 25 to 40, running kind of did it for me. I could sort of eat whatever I wanted, and running kind of kept me slim, and I looked okay, and I was happy. And I felt good because the running hasn't, gives you all the endorphins and you feel really good. And then around 45, 46, I started putting on weight around the middle, um, which is sort of the classic thing that women notice at that age. And I was like, what is this, and here, and I was like, oh, what is this? What's going on? And so I started running a little more, and, that wasn't working. I was just like, okay, what am I going to do? Nothing's happening here. And so a few other things happened in my life, and I decided I'm going to be a trainer, and like I said, I wanted to coach running. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to become a running coach, and that's what I'm going to do. So when I went to school, that was when I learned about a lot of resistance training. Like, it was pretty much all that. So that's pretty much all I did. And it probably took a year, I would say, of really concentrated effort, with a good balanced program, 3 days a week, full body, full body 3 days a week when I started. And it was amazing. Like, I watched my body change. And actually, I would say I have probably not more muscle than I had back then, but I certainly look more fit than I did when I was running. So, I was sold, right? It's like, oh, sold. And not just the look, like you were saying earlier, not just the way I looked, but I felt so much better. I just felt just stronger and more capable. And, the weight started coming off, and I just felt so much better. And every year since then, I just feel better and better and better. And, it's pretty amazing. Like, I just turned 60 in January, and I feel probably the best in my life. Probably.
Yeah, that's one of the
Which
things
is,
that is like it sounds so great, and obviously it's true, but the 1 year that it takes can be where people get caught up, because it's such a new world. Like, I've coached a
yeah,
lot of people that start from scratch, beginners, never been into the gym, don't have an athletic body, highly
yeah.
academic, or just not raised around a gym setting or sport setting. And that 1 year is really tough. There's a lot of mental obstacles that they have to overcome, like just going to the gym and being surrounded by a bunch of people that are confident in a gym, when they're not, they feel like everyone's looking at them. Like, that's just one of many obstacles. So how did you navigate that? Like, obviously you were into running, you kind of had that sporting background and athletic background, as you said, but how did you overcome some of the things that people face so that people can walk away with a few tips?
Well, I could tell you what I tell my clients, and because I work with almost exclusively women in midlife, so 40 and up to like 70. And I find what I tell them is, don't rely on motivation, because motivation comes and goes. So we can't, especially in the beginning, you can't really rely on that. You need to just show up. And it sounds so simple, but it's just, hey, you're not going to feel like going to the gym. And especially when you're not used to it. And like you said, you go in there and you feel kind of intimidated. There's people who know what they're doing in there. And so I do recommend, if people can afford it, to get a trainer, because I do think it's good, even just for a few sessions, just to learn the equipment, or even just to have the gym owner walk you around and show you how everything works, because they're happy to do that. They want you in the gym. And learn how to, use the equipment, and get a program, from a qualified source, either online or in person, and just show up. Just consistent, be consistent. It only takes 2 or 3 days a week, right? And, from like 20 to 45 minutes, even as little as that to get results. But you have to be consistent. And so I think that's something, I think the problem is that nowadays, with all of the misinformation online and all of the get fit quick programs, people think it's going to happen in 6 months. I literally have people sign up with me in 6 months, or not even 6 months, 6 weeks later, and they're like, I haven't lost any weight. And I'm kind of like, oh, you know, like, it's going to take a bit longer. You got to give it some time. So I always tell my clients, give it a year. And some of them sort of balk at that. They're like, oh my goodness, a year? Yeah, give it a year of consistent showing up. And I try not to overwhelm them with too many things. So we'll start with the workouts and then we'll look at nutrition after. Because I find if you sort of put too many things in the bucket, people get really scared and over. It's like, oh, okay, I've got these workouts and then I've got to cut calories and I've got to eat more protein and I've got to somehow get fiber in and not go over on calories. And I just find it can be overwhelming for a lot of people. So I like to just start with one thing and then we add on.
Yeah. I think that's the best approach too, especially for people that are new, so they can bite onto something and get that, oh, I did this and I overcame it. Now what's next? And you slowly build up the self-efficacy and the confidence in the person so that they feel like they can tackle the numerous things. Because it is a bit of a checklist. You have your workouts, your steps, then you got to approach sleep in some way, stress management in some way. And then you can kind of like feel like a robot trapped in this box of trying to tick things off. And then you're like, oh man, I don't even like, personally, I screw it up all the time. I can't imagine someone that is trying to learn how to squat and learn how to count a calorie and learn what has protein in it to then try and master other aspects, which kind of just becomes your lifestyle as a personal trainer or as someone that's enthusiastic about fitness. But it definitely doesn't come natural for a lot of people. And even if it does, it's a bit of a struggle still. So, like, what would you give advice to your younger self now that you know what you know and you are a trainer? How would you change your trajectory if you would?
I think I most certainly would. I would have done more strength training earlier on, and maybe not done so much running. Maybe had more balance with my training. Definitely would have been lifting weights, like doing what I'm doing now, back then. So, and just we know more now than we did then, because I did have a trainer back then. And she was, we were lifting light weights and, not doing what people are doing now. And it was good, it was fine, but it wasn't as impactful as, what I'm doing now in my program and what I'm doing with clients. I would have never dreamed of deadlifting back then, I just wouldn't have. To me, that's like, that was for the guys, back then I would have never done it. And now I just love that, it's great.
Yeah, man. Like I'll say before the podcast, like we are basically trying to brainwash people to lift weights. And really we get nothing out of it, unless they work with us as a trainer. But the benefits largely outweigh, the time sacrifice if you're doing it correctly, which is once again a big thing. How you talked about having a structured program from a qualified source, not just ChatGPTing, I need a leg workout and then going to do it, which my client recently did in Thailand while they were traveling. And I was like, hey, just ask me for a workout and I'll give you a much better one. He was like, oh yeah, we didn't really do half of it. And I was like, yeah, that's why you don't do that. Maybe in the future that's going to be a possibility, but at the moment that's it's a bit all over the place. And I would have a similar recommendation for myself. Even though I didn't really get into running, I was lifting weights. I would have followed a structured program a lot earlier. Like I started when I was 14 in the Yeah, in the gym at school. Well, I went to a really rugby dominant school back in New Zealand.
Mm,
And if you play rugby, it helps if you have a bit more muscle. It helps if you're a bigger guy. And I was a very small kid. So I was one of the small kids growing up. And I had a lot of heart, but I didn't have a lot of size. So I
mm.
really fell in love with the gym to get better at sport. But I just did what the big guys were doing in the gym. And I'd look at them and they were like shrugging 200 kilos, which I don't know is like 450 pounds or something. And then by the time I left high school, I was doing that. But I was doing it with terrible form. And I always had a
Yeah.
really sore lower back. And then I was
Mm,
doing all these exercises and I could feel like I would do certain exercises and my shoulder would give way. And I just had so many blind spots, had so many holes because I was a 14-year-old to 16, 17, 18-year-old just doing what the big guys were doing and not considering basically anything structural or anything
yeah.
balanced. So even though I got through it and, now I know how to like train myself out of those bad habits, having guidance early on would have saved me a lot of time and actually fast tracked me a lot. Like I think the first 10 years I did was a bit of a waste, to be honest. It was good in terms of effort and developing habits, but in terms of technique, training intensity, structure, knowing what I should do on certain days, it was a bit of a waste of time.
Yeah. I understand that. I can relate to that. Yeah.
So
Well,
what
it's
was one of
frustrating.
the, sorry, you go.
Oh, I was just going to say it's frustrating when you get a client and they've been working with a trainer for 5 years and you can't tell that they've been working with a trainer because they're not moving very well and you're sort of puzzled, you know. I get that quite a bit. Say, oh, I've been with the same trainer for 5 years and and this they can't really squat properly yet or and they're not moving in a full range of motion. They have muscle imbalances, and I think that can be really frustrating as well as finding a good source, a good trainer and a good program. And yeah, I find there's a lot of kind of not great resources for people
Yeah.
out there.
I, I I think the personal training industry is very wild, wild west. It's definitely been my understanding of that in Australia and New Zealand. I have trained someone in America, but that was like a one-off trip. But in Australia and New Zealand, the thing that frankly pissed me off a lot was that no trainers, apart from the high quality trainers in the gym, which would you know it, were back to back and flat out and making the most money and were the most well respected, most of the trainers didn't have a program. So they were just walking around and freestyling it. And that
Yeah,
bothers me. Even now when I see people mainly online and they're like they've never followed a program before, but they're like, oh, I've done personal training before, or I've done even like group classes or something like that, but they've had no
yeah,
structure and people are paying for something and they're not getting a service. They're just getting the bench is free. Let's go do bench press. I'm like, why are you paying this guy or this girl? You shouldn't be freestyling it. That's not
yeah,
like if you just do heaps of random shit, you get random, you get random results. And that's
exactly.
one thing that's bothered me about the personal training industry a lot is just
I
the lack
agree.
of structure.
Totally agree. And I see a lot of it, people doing different. Oh, well, and then you'll get the clients that come in and they're like, this is boring. I'm doing the same thing all the time. And
Yeah,
like, yeah, it's kind of boring.
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, it's boring by design,
yeah. You
you
have to
know?
repeat a lot of the same things to get great at them, just like many things. But unfortunately, in the
Yeah.
gym, it's like, yeah, you want to keep it exciting, which I understand.
Yeah,
But if you're always doing exciting things and doing the next best thing, you never really master anything. And that's a problem. You
exactly.
never get strong, which is what everyone wants to be deep down.
Yeah, I agree. Totally. Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit about metabolism, and I found this study which I reference a lot, but I wanted to rattle it off. It was in 2021 called the Daily Energy Expenditure Through the Human Life Course. And it's analyzed from 6,421 people aged 8 to 95 years old using doubly labeled water, which is the gold standard method for measuring total daily energy expenditure. The finding was that metabolism after adjusting for body size and composition is fairly stable from about 20 to 60. So basically everyone that says, my metabolism is broken between, I don't know, anywhere between 30 and 60 is not lying. Obviously, it's different. This is just the average. But it then declines in older adulthood, about 0.7% decline after 60. By about age 90, expenditure is roughly 26% lower than in middle-aged adults. And once again, it doesn't mean everyone's metabolism suddenly crashes when they turn 60. It's describing an average-related decline. But I wanted to know what you tell clients and what you do personally around keeping a strong metabolism.
Yeah. So my thoughts on that are that it's not necessarily, a lot of women think it's your hormones. So they're like, oh, it's menopause. I'm in menopause. So all of a sudden I'm gaining weight. Okay, well then how do you explain when it happens in men? How do you explain? So, because it does. It happens in men as well. And so it's a sticky subject because some people get really upset when you tell them it's not menopause necessarily, or at least that might be a small contributing factor. But like the study that you were discussing, and what you said earlier about losing muscle mass starting in your 30s at 4 to 8% per decade. Your muscle is more metabolically active. And so you burn more calories at rest when you have a little bit more muscle, and that muscle is declining. The other thing that starts to decline is our activity. We drive everywhere. We sit at a desk. We're working a job. We're not out doing things. And then the other contributing factor, I believe, is all of this easily accessible, highly palatable, highly processed food that we all have access to. It's not like when we were hunter and gatherers and we had to go out and fight for our food. Nowadays, food is cheap and highly palatable and plentiful. And so I think it's a combination of things. And so what I tell my clients is, it's maybe 5% of it is menopause. And then, it's multifactorial. So it's all of these things. You need to move more. So you mentioned steps earlier. So we need to move more, especially if you work a desk job. We need to build a bit of muscle because it's more metabolically active. We need to maybe watch what we're eating, maybe look at the composition of our food, a little more protein, more fiber, more whole, unprocessed foods that fill you up more so that you're less likely to go for the cake and the ice cream. And I had a client recently say, oh, it's Ramadan here. And so we're just eating, from like 6 o'clock on, we're eating, and I can't say no because it's rude to say no. And, and I said, okay. So she was starving herself all day so that, saving up calories and then overeating. And so I said, a better thing to do is to eat a little something before you go, like eat some high quality lean protein, eat some vegetables, some healthy fiber, and then and then you're less likely to kind of overdo it, because I think a lot of us do that. We sit at a desk all day and then go to parties and overindulge and, so I think it's a lot of things. And so what I try to do with my clients is I try to teach them the sort of building blocks that they need to improve composition. And then the biggest one is be patient, because people will give up long before, they're seeing results, because they're looking at a number on a scale. If you look at the number on the scale, that's not telling you much. It tells you that your weight, maybe you haven't lost any weight, but it doesn't tell you that maybe you gained some muscle and lost a little bit of adipose tissue, right? So, I try to tell them, take progress photos, use a tape measure, and, and this stuff takes time. It took you time to put the weight on, and it's going to take you some time to take the weight off. And so patience is huge, I find.
Yeah, it's a very emotional conversation because, as you're saying, people are impacted differently by age, by weight, by different parts of their life, and by hormones, menopause. Some people do
Yeah.
go through it. Some people, have a really tough time with it. Some people cruise through it. And there's no real black and white answer. But I think,
Yeah.
like you're saying, there are principles that we can apply no matter what we're going through. And that's not to remove empathy from the situation, but it's more so to encourage action to what is possible. And
Yeah.
what I found is, like, on the back of what you were saying, physical activity is one of the biggest drops. And I've seen it in my friend groups and in my family, and also with people that I interact with online and my clients. Activity is it's such a struggle to get in if you don't have a job that leans towards it. Thankfully, my steps are crazy because I have a very physically active job. And
Yeah.
I also have a natural tendency to move quite a lot, but some people don't have that. And that is a real slap in the face. And I recently had to tell someone that you're just not moving enough and you're eating too much. And like, not to oversimplify it and just say, move more, eat less. I'm a great personal trainer. That's all you have to do to have a good life.
Yeah.
That's not true. But in many cases, it is just getting off your ass and moving more. And it is just trying to create obstacles so that it's harder to reach for those highly palatable, highly processed foods. What
Yeah.
what structures do you have in your life to help you to make that more natural and to make that easier to do, as opposed to eating a donut, eating a pizza? Like, do you have things in place that you create
Yeah.
to make it easier?
Yeah, I plan because I find when I don't plan ahead and meal prep, then I'm staring into the fridge or the cupboard and thinking, okay, I could have, the cookies, or I could have, like, what am I going to have? There's no protein in the house. Which happens to us as well. I'm sure it happens to you. Sometimes you don't have the protein, you missed going to the store or whatever. So I do find on the weekends I like to sort of do a bit of meal prep. So, I'll boil some potatoes and some sweet potatoes and then have some protein, cook some chicken, just so I have some things that I can go to quickly. That's a big help. And just not having a lot of things that, a lot of high crave type foods around. Like, we just don't have them in the house. And I realize that when you have children in the house, you probably are going to have some of that stuff. So it's not completely avoidable always. Teenagers will sometimes bring home a big bag of chips or whatever, right? And it's there, and and Halloween candy and all that stuff. But I just find planning ahead for what you're going to have readily available. And that's not to say I don't have treats, because I eat everything. So if I want, if I have a craving for a cupcake, I'll go buy a cupcake, but I buy one. I don't buy a bunch of them because I know I don't trust myself to have that in the house. So, I'll go to Whole Foods and buy a cupcake and enjoy it, and and then go on about my day. So it's the 80-20 rule. Like, most of the time I'm eating these foods that I know are good for my body, and I'm staying roughly within my maintenance calories. And making sure I get a certain amount of protein, certain amount of fiber. And then the treats are kind of like, I have a treat every day. I'll eat chocolate every day because I like it, and it makes me feel less deprived. So I do tell most of my clients that, unless I have a client that's like, look, I have a food addiction, I can't have this food in the house. And then that's a little tougher with those people because they can't do moderation. And alcohol fits into that as well. If you can't do moderation, I think it's better not to drink. I don't know how you feel about that, but I think because I will occasionally have one drink, but I can have one drink, once, blue moon, whereas I find some people can't. And so in those cases, it's better just don't have the dessert, don't have the alcohol if you feel like it's not something you can control.
Yeah, I've gone through different phases in my life. I've had periods. So there was a time when I just became a qualified personal trainer, and I was all or nothing. Not with alcohol, with food. So I had to keep things far away from myself because I was this obsessed maniac about eating clean. And if I got a
Yeah.
sniff of anything, I would lose it. I would go out of control. I had an eating disorder, though I was never diagnosed. It sounds very much like an eating disorder. So I would like eat boiled eggs for breakfast, nothing with it, like just salt and pepper. And then I
Yeah.
would basically just have like a protein shake
Clean.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was very bad. It was very like I was in this box of dichotomous thinking. It was good and bad. It was black and white. There was no in between. So I was good during the day, having boiled eggs, super sad breakfast. Even though I enjoyed it at the time, I think I just brainwashed myself into enjoying it. Then I'd have like a protein shake at lunch, and then I'd be like, "Oh man, I'm so good. I've only had about 500 or 600 calories all day." Come around to like 8 or 9 p.m., I'd finish all my personal training clients back to back all day. Really busy, all this stuff, getting crazy amount of steps, probably like 20 to 30,000 when I was on the gym floor from 6 a.m. till like 9 p.m. And then I would go home and be so starved and also, well, physically deprived and mentally deprived because I was like, I'm not doing this, so I'm so strong and I'm David Goggins. And then I would go
Yeah.
home and just absolutely lose control. I would binge everything inside. And I would end up, although I never tracked them because that would be even crazier, but I'd probably end up on like 5,000 calories. And the sad thing was, and I've talked about this a few times, it was things that I didn't even enjoy. I was just doing it out of brainlessness. I was just eating like,
Hungry.
oh yeah, hungry. I was like, oh, there's dumplings in the freezer. I'm gonna heat them
Yeah.
up and eat them. And then, oh, there's a banana there. I'm gonna eat a banana, but then put heaps of chocolate sauce on it. And then I'll just eat all this random stuff. Like it wasn't even like I was sitting down and enjoying like a burger and chips and pizza and being like, this is
Yeah.
moderation. It was like a
Yeah.
really strange time. So there was that time where I was very all or nothing. And then I came to this point where I was like, well, if I actually tell myself I can have ice cream, then I won't desire it as much. And that actually really helped me. I had a bit of this, a bit of that, like you do.
Yeah.
And that really helped. Like, I stopped having those crazy binges because that's what I was trying to fix. And I was stuck in that loop for a few years and I felt helpless. And when I actually told myself, well, if I have a piece of cake or have an ice cream, then I'm not a loser. I'm not a failure. It's just a bunch of calories. And I kind of removed the big black and white thinking out of it, then that really saved me. And I feel like I became a new person from then that was free because I used to turn down social events. People would be like, I'll pay for your food. And this was when I was a broke student. So that was very attractive. I was like, no, I don't know what the calories are on the menu. And I would go home and tell myself that I'm such a success. And really, I look back, I'm like, that is such a failure because
Oh.
I was missing out on so much in life. So I've been bouncing between, and now I'm kind of I'm not against ice cream and stuff like that, but I've just turned that a lot down in my life, and I find that if you have less of the kind of treaty stuff, which I don't even really enjoy anyway, I find that I actually really enjoy fruit, and it sounds really lame and it sounds really unrelatable, but I really dislike fruit at the moment. So I'll go buy rock melon, I'll get grapefruit, I'll get kiwi, I'll have apple, and I'll eat that. So me and my wife go through phases, but sometimes we'll chop up fruit on a chopping board and just like put that on the ground or on the coffee table or somewhere. And then we'll just eat it while we are doing our thing at the end of the day and like recapping.
Yeah.
Where we used to bond over ice cream and gelato and do all that stuff, we found that we feel better. Our gut health has improved, which is a whole different conversation. But we feel better doing those things and kind of gravitating away from processed foods.
Yeah.
Even though we could have them in moderation, we just feel better this way. And we just don't buy it and we feel better for it. So that's where I'm at now.
I think that's great. And I would say I'm mostly that way. If I do have a treat, it's very small. I'll have like 3 squares of dark chocolate, but I'm the same. I love fruit. In fact, my big thing is berries. I just love like raspberries and
Oh,
blueberries. I'm obsessed.
I
So I
pay a
eat.
small fortune for berries each week. Yeah.
Oh, so do we. Like, I'll tell my partner, I'm like, oh, pick up some berries. And he's like, okay, they're $10 for,
Yeah.
for this little tiny thing, but okay. Because he knows I love them. And so that's how I get a lot of my fiber. And I just love it. It's so great. It's like tasty and delicious. And you're right, you don't have to put anything on it. It's great just the way it is. It's a treat. So I think that's great. I just have some clients that kind of go all or nothing thinking, and then they end up, like you said, like binging, which, as you know, isn't ideal.
Yeah, it's a difficult way to it's a difficult thing to navigate as well, because it's not just have some meals. It's not just simple advice, although you can create boundaries. It's a highly emotional thing, which I found. And I
Yeah.
probably needed to do a lot of work before actually coming through it. But for me, the thing that saved me, like I said, was allowing that 20% of junk food, of whatever food, of, hey, Brock,
Yeah.
just take a break, and like, you're not gonna get fat, you're not gonna die, you're not going to,
Yeah.
explode. You'll probably feel better, and then it'll probably turn down your cravings after that. That's what works for me anyway.
Yeah. Or I don't know if you've ever seen people who are like, okay, I want the cookies, so I'll have some carrot sticks. And then you eat those, and then it's like, oh, I still want the cookie, so I'll have some, an apple. And, okay, I still want the cookie. And then they eat all the other stuff and then end up eating the
And
whole bag of cookies.
yeah,
Which is like, why don't if you just had the one cookie and you would have been fine. But it's this mental thing. It's like, oh, I can't have the cookies, so I'm gonna have all this other stuff, and then you end up like, oh, screw it, I'll just have all the cookies. You know?
yeah, that's where environment is so important, and that's why I was
Yeah,
asking for any kind of tips or obstacle overcomes that you have, because environment is a
yeah,
lot. Like, if the cookies are there, you just stare at them and you just look at them all day. Or, if you struggle with gaming, if you have your like PlayStation with the
yeah.
controller on top, just sitting in front of you while you're watching TV, you're going to cave in. If you struggle with drinking, if you drive past the bar every time you go home, you're going to stop at the corner bar and have a few
Mm-hmm.
drinks. Um,
Yeah,
and basically, I think as adults, in order to be successful in many things, but especially in fitness, it's not necessarily like what you do, it's what you don't do, and controlling what you don't do by manipulating your environment. Like, if you drive past the bar on your way home, just drive a different way home. And I find that there are
yeah,
things that we can do, especially in fitness. Like, I don't know, if you struggle to go to the gym, yeah, like drive past the gym, or invite a mate that trains to train with you. If you don't want to
absolutely.
eat those things, don't put them in the freezer. And it's unfortunately it's too simple to sound sexy. It's not like, hey, take this peptide and you'll
I
be
know.
shredded in 6 weeks. It's like, hey, don't buy the thing that you love and don't put her in your house that brings you joy, and just go about your day. It's a really hard sell.
Yeah. And I think different people are different too. People have different palates. I know some people are like, I can't eat food, like, I'm very simple with food. I eat it sort of, here's some chicken and here's some potatoes. And like, I don't use a lot of sauce when I make things. So um, and I don't feel like I'm missing anything. Whereas other people will say, well, there's no flavor, there's no sauce, there's no, like they want it to be more delicious, I guess. And that's never been really a factor for me. And I know it is for some people. Like my
Hmm.
partner, he's a chef.
Oh,
So when he makes things, I'm like, do not put, and he's like, get out of here. He doesn't even want
don't
me in
put
the
the coconut
kitchen.
cream in it and the
Yeah.
butter.
Yeah, like in mine, can you put in some, low sugar almond milk instead of, right? And he's just looking at me and shaking his head, like, oh, and, rolling his eyes. And he's like, just let me make it. And, then you deal with it. And so, yeah, because I don't like, I like good food. I like going to nice restaurants and having the fancy food, and I like it when he makes things. But I've kind of trained him now to leave out some of that stuff because, otherwise my head might explode. If I don't know what's in it, my head could explode. So
Yeah.
yeah, I try to, and I know, like I said, some people, they can't eat bland food. So in that case, you do have to, maybe use some herbs, and salt and pepper can really make a big difference. Even just some culinary herbs, adding those can make a big difference to the flavor. And so that's another little thing I tell people. Instead of putting a bunch of salad oil or, mayonnaise, stuff like that, maybe put some avocado instead, substitute your mayonnaise with avocado. Still creamy, it's got fiber, it's good for you. And then maybe like just some herbs instead of these heavy sauces, and maybe I put olive oil in a spray bottle, and I spray everything with olive oil. So instead of putting a lot of butter or sauce, that's a good hack, and it tastes great. And a lot of my clients love that one. Like they're like, "Oh, I bought the sprayer, and that's really great," And it seriously cuts down on the fat and calories
Yeah, my
because
wife
you can
started using
control it.
that. Yeah, and it's been much more controlled, and it's been an easier way to manage calorie intake, which once again isn't
Yeah,
the be all and end all of life, but it is a big thing. And
yeah,
especially oil, there's a big difference between one spray and half a cup,
yeah,
or a quarter cup, or even just
yeah.
tablespoons, because the reality is, and what I found is that people's tablespoon is not what a true tablespoon is. And it's like when you have peanut butter and you have to weigh out if you've ever had the sad experience of weighing out peanut butter, it's very depressing
Every
because you
day.
because you realize how little you actually get to have if you're going to have a serving. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so I
I
wanted
do.
to.
I've got the measuring spoon, and I've got the knife.
Okay,
I'm like, that's me.
yeah,
I do that. And
yeah, it's sad.
counting the peanuts.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, you
I'm
have to
the
do it
worst.
if you want to be accurate. And unfortunately, this is something that a lot of people don't want to digest. And I don't think it's
Yes.
essential for everyone, but once you
Yeah.
track your calories, it's like tracking your budget. You know where your spending goes. You know what you're eating, what the composition of those calories are, and it really is the key to success for fat loss that often gets in the way of people getting to their goal. It's tracking, and they think it takes so long. Man, it takes 3 to 5 minutes per day. Once you streamline it, you can copy paste meals. You can, it can remember foods that you
Oh,
always have, and you can just put that in. And I think that is a necessary thing that you have to do if you haven't done it before. If you have some background in nutrition and understanding, that can help. But once again, there's been studies where they've asked nutritionists and dietitians to track and with their eyes and kind of estimate calories, and they were off by up to 50%. And this is people who work in nutrition and dietetics. How do you encourage people to track? Do you just say track or you won't be successful? What's your approach?
well, so that's a great question. Some people don't want to track. So if they absolutely come to me and say, look, I'm not going to track calories, and they have different reasons. Some people will say, I can't track calories because I have a history of eating disorders, and I completely respect that. And I think that's a really great thing to not, to know your limitation and to know that that's triggering for you. So for those people, I'm like, absolutely don't track if you find it triggering and it might trigger your eating disorder. Absolutely don't. Other people don't want to track just because they feel like it's, like you mentioned, it takes too much time and it's a pain and I've got to, figure out, weigh things and, gauge how much it is and all this. And for those people, I'll usually, I have a soft sell. So I'll just say, okay, maybe try it just for, a week, just for a week. Or, and then if they don't want to track, I'll say, just write down everything you've eaten this week and then give it to me. So then they'll do that and then they'll give me their food journal and then I can kind of assess it and say, hey, here's where I think, you're going over on fat because maybe you're eating 2 avocados a day or whatever it is, right? And I'll look at it and then I can, and often they're shocked, they'll say, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't realize that was 3,000 calories, right? I thought I was eating like 1,200, and I'm like, no, and often that's enough of a incentive to get them to start tracking. Just me kind of looking at it and going, okay, here's what you actually ate. And then just encouraging people to track everything because I had another client that was telling me, no, I'm eating 1,200 calories a day, which we both know is not enough. And I was like, wow, it's weird. And you're not losing weight. And, and then we realized that she had like a bowl of nuts that every time she went to the cupboard, she was eating these almonds, like a handful. And I'm like, that handful is like 250 calories, like, every time. I said, that's like an extra, like 800 calories. And she was like, oh, right. And it was a big surprise. Like she was so surprised. So, and another client of mine was like she was like, oh, I have to have these cookies. I eat these cookies. And I'm like, how many cookies? There's a bakery I go to and I have to have these cookies and I have them every day. And I'm like, how many cookies? She goes, like a handful. And I said, how big are the cookies? And I know we all know what bakery cookies are. They're like 250 each. It's not like the ones you get in the bag that are maybe 70 each. These are like, and I said, well, how many is in a handful? And she goes, I don't know, like 5.
Oh, no.
So I added it up and I was like, this is the problem. And she was like, oh my God, I had no idea. And then this was really cool. She came up with her own solution. And she said, Michaela, I realized that it wasn't the cookie I wanted. It was the chocolate chips in the cookie. So she went out and bought Hershey's Kisses, which are about 20 calories each. And she goes, and I let myself have like 10 of those. That's 200 calories, which is way better than like 1,000 from the cookies. And she was like, and I feel great. Like I don't want any more chocolate. Like that's it. And I was like, yeah, that's so cool that just like knowledge is power. Like, hey, I didn't know that I was eating 1,000 calories worth of
it's just awareness. That's what we're trying to get to the bottom of. Just trying to be aware of the calories that you're consuming because, whether people like it or not, the calories in versus calories out model does work. It is a complex model because, we aren't robots that just spit out calories in a linear way. But, if you're having a handful of cookies, unfortunately, that is the, that is the thing that you'll have to stop. And calories in versus calories out doesn't honor that. It doesn't let it go by. And that's why awareness is just one of the biggest things. I wanted to set up the question that I had with a few stats before. So, just mainly, once again, I'm a big shill of trying to get people to lift weights like you are. So we're going to, try to fairmonger them with some stats. Globally, nearly 31% of adults are physically inactive and inactivity rises further after age 60. And also only 13.9% of US adults age 65 plus met both aerobic and muscle strengthening guidelines in 2022. So a few years ago, but I can't imagine it's changed too much from that. Also in Australia, I was looking, falls are the leading cause of hospitalized injuries and injury deaths among older Australians. In 2019 and 2020, falls in people aged 65 and over led to 133,000 hospitalizations and 5,000 deaths, unfortunately. And approximately 1/3 of people over 65 fall each year. Now, obviously, not everyone listening to this is going to be over 65, and that doesn't mean that it doesn't apply to you because the muscle that we take into 60 plus is the muscle that we need to strategically build in our 20s, 30s, and 40s. And it's not very cool to think, oh yeah, man, I'm training so that I don't fall when I'm 65 or when I'm 70. Obviously, it's to try and impress the girls and guys, or just to feel strong and just feel healthy and feel confident. But the reality is the muscle that we build now is what we do carry into our older years. And I've seen it with grandparents, with friends' parents, with families' parents. The ones that prioritize a physically active lifestyle are the ones that can play with their grandkids and play with them and put them on their shoulders and walk around and have all these fun memories, which is where I'm at the moment with a 1 and 3-year-old.
Yeah.
And then I see other grandparents that can't look after the kids that are the same age because if the toddler gets up and runs, they can't catch them.
Yeah.
Or if the toddler does something erratic on a playground, they can't get up because it takes, like, they have to find something to pull themselves up, and then they can, go and save the kid. But then it's too late. So
Yeah.
on the back of that, if there were only 10 exercises that you could do for the rest of your life, what would they be?
So walking, and I know some people say that's not exercise, but walking is a big one for me. Like, I hike a lot. So walking uphill, hiking in the woods, that would be one. The next would be squatting. So squats, RDL, just because I like it. Bulgarian split squats, believe it or not, because I like them. I actually enjoy them. Brutal, but I enjoy them. Pull-ups, which I love doing, and I just feel like it's good to be able to pull your body weight up. I think that's amazing. Push-ups. I like a good deficit push-up. That's sort of what I've been doing lately, and I love it. What else? I've got 4 more. Any sort of horizontal pull, so like a 1-arm row maybe, or seated row. And what else? I'm running out of ideas here. Something for core, so probably like a core stabilizer, like a dead bug or some kind of bird dog row or something like that. And what else do I like doing? Yeah, sort of. I like the big compound moves, so probably mostly compound exercises, I would say. And hip thrust.
Okay, I think that's 9. I think that's 9.
Okay.
You have one more.
I have one more. I'm looking at exercises here. Oh, you know what? I like lateral raises just because I like shoulders. So I think lateral raises would be. I would want to keep the shoulders.
Okay, a few questions on exercise options. So with the squat, how do you squat? Is it like a goblet squat? Is it a barbell squat? Front squat?
It's I do front squats and back squats. Yeah, both.
Okay.
So I just started doing front squats because I'm not crazy about building huge quads. So the front squatting is just more for athleticism. I just like to be able to do them. And then I do like a low bar back squat.
Nice.
So yeah.
And for the pull-ups, what sort of grip do you use? Do you go underhand, overhand, neutral?
I like to switch it up between pronated and neutral. I don't usually do chin-ups. I don't, because they sort of hit more biceps, and I don't want to build biceps. They're big enough. I actually don't do any biceps at all. So I get them when I'm doing compound pulls. So I feel like I don't need to do them.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'm similar. Contrary to most men, I don't train my arms. I'm a big compound person as well. I will.
Oh, good.
I will, squat, deadlift, and once again, not the sexiest sell just to do compounds, but often it works. And unfortunately, when I tell people that the exercises stay basically the same year round, I'll pull something out and bring something in every now and then, like someone off the bench to come in for a couple of programs and then go back to the bench. But the star players of the squat and the deadlift, the chin up, the push up, like you, they stick around because that is how we get strong. One thing I've been saying a lot is strength is a skill. And as much as it is being strong, it's actually the repetition of the movement, where you actually get that stabilization, that coordination of the move, and the comfortability under the bar, or the full range of motion that you're doing. And if you
Yeah.
keep recycling exercises or just doing what the big guys are doing in the gym or just going in and doing what you feel like, you don't actually get that repetition of doing a low bar squat for 4 sets of 5 every Monday
Yeah.
that you get when you
Yeah.
do follow a structured
That's
program.
exactly what I do. You just said exactly what I do. It's hilarious.
I know a lot. No.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about peptides and the conversation around it, and
Yeah.
I don't really want to go there, but I guess I wanted to highlight that because there are a lot of people looking for quick fixes.
Yeah.
And I do want to talk about supplements, which is associated with that. But I wanted to get your take on it, and if there is anything that you take, and why you take them to improve your health.
Yeah, so supplements, I don't take many supplements. I will supplement whey protein if I'm, deficient. So, if I can't get it from food, I'll use it. And I also like to use it in some recipes like overnight oats, just to bring up the protein in the oats. And then I take creatine every day, 5 grams a day. Yeah. And sometimes I will supplement like fish oil if I'm not eating a lot of fish. So just for the omega-3s. And vitamin D, I'll sometimes take, but I haven't taken it recently. I find if I take too many supplements, I get a bit like overwhelmed. Like, oh, you have to remember to take this, and so I'm not very good at taking them. So the important ones are the creatine and the, it's right here, which is hilarious. It's like right next to me.
Yeah,
So I
but that's
can't
how you
forget
remember to take it. Exactly.
Yeah, I can't forget to take it.
Well, that's unfortunate for some because a lot of people think that they need to take a big list of supplements. So,
Oh, I know.
so if you're only taking 3 or 4 supplements, which are not very groundbreaking in terms of like, I take this fat burner and then I take
Yeah,
ashwagandha and
no.
then I take, this and that. So where do you think you're getting the bulk of your, let's say, longevity and health from?
The honest answer, and people hate this answer, but it's strength training, like it's resistance training. So that's where I feel like that's what I feel has really changed my life. Even from running, like running's great. You get a really good VO2 max. It's good. It's great for your heart health. It's really great. But yeah, I feel like having more skeletal muscle is so important for all aspects of longevity. I just really feel like it helps you from, protecting you from falls. And like you said, carrying your grandchild. I have a 3-year-old grandchild. So, when I see her, I can chase her around and I can pick her up and, keep up with her. And yeah, it's just been a game changer. And I also think, I'm going to say this, it might get me in trouble, but I also think, and I have seen some small studies, that it does help with collagen in your skin. And I have seen an improvement in my skin since I've been lifting weights. So it could be something else. But I have seen some studies about it stimulates collagen production. So
Yes.
that could be.
Look, any
That could
reason,
be.
like any more supporting evidence to just shove resistance training into
Yeah,
people's face, I'm all for it. Like there's
that
even
could
some
be.
studies that have shown that it makes you more intelligent, or people that lift are more intelligent. Um,
Oh yeah, and staves off like dementia and things of
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
nature.
yeah, cognitive
Yeah,
decline, which is,
yeah.
like come on, everyone. We all want to be more intelligent. Let's just, let's get to the gym.
Yeah.
I have a closing tradition where I ask for a quote, a book, and a habit to help people become better, and something that you do. So, yeah, a quote
Okay.
that's really changed your life or changed your perspective, a book that's really helped you, and a habit that you do daily, or something that you do very often to help make you a better person. Let's start off with the quote.
So the quote, I have a lot of favorites, but I heard something recently that from Valerie Bertinelli. Do you know who that is? She's an actress from the 70s, so you wouldn't know who she was, but she was like a teen actress on a sitcom from my generation back in the 70s. And so she's around my age now. She actually was married to Eddie Van Halen. And she was somebody that my generation kind of respected because we grew up with her. And I saw her interviewed last week, and she said, it's okay to love yourself. And it sounds so simple, but I think really that's should be, an anthem for women of my generation, because a lot of us grew up not really understanding anything about self-love. Self-love is sort of this thing that's taboo. Like we shouldn't, think about ourselves, and we shouldn't put too much emphasis on ourselves. And I think that's changing, certainly. And I think, and it brings me back to working with women of this age group. Loving yourself means looking after yourself, and that ties into strength training and, showing up for yourself, being consistent and loving yourself. I think that's super important.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think once again that will bring people to prioritize their health, which is, what I'm a big aspect on, because if you the cheesy saying is, if you don't look after yourself, then who is going to, type of thing. And, it actually, to make it kind of like selfish to selfless, like if you love yourself, it does help you to love others in a greater capacity. And that's one thing, like a very small example, and this isn't an example of loving myself, but it kind of is. Like when I go to bed early, I'm less short with my family, and it makes their life better. Yeah. So the love that I can show to them, I'm able to like build that capacity through, let's say, loving myself and prioritizing my sleep. Because if I don't and just kind of like just do whatever I want, which isn't the best for me, and then I'm no fun to be around. My kids don't really enjoy it. My wife definitely doesn't enjoy it. And there are many examples of that, like decisions you can make to love yourself to a greater degree and do whatever you want. Like do the things that are best for you. It actually helps others, which I find kind of helpful to think about.
Absolutely. And, often we treat ourselves with much less thoughtfulness than we do others. Like I always think, okay, would I do this with my child? Like, would I, burn the candle at both ends? Would I suggest that for my child or for someone I loved? Probably not. But we do these things to ourselves and treat ourselves with less care than we would with the people we love. And there's something sort of fundamentally wrong about that.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. It's so easy to do. All right. A book?
Yeah. The book, I don't read a lot of sort of self-help, but a book that I read when I was 14 was Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. So it's like a lot of Eastern philosophy and meditation. He was a yogi in the 50s. And so that sort of turned me on to meditation. I'm also a certified meditation teacher, so I teach meditation as well. And that sort of started me on that more introspective sort of spiritual journey. Very young. I read that when I was 14. It was probably a bit over my head, but so that changed my life, I would say.
Mm. So if you're not too into self-help books, what sort of books do you read?
I really like science fiction, which sounds kind of weird. I don't know many women that like science fiction, but I do. I like old school science fiction, like Philip K. Dick, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep was my favorite book, and that was one of the books that they made into a film, that Blade Runner film. They called it Blade Runner, but the book was called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and I read that quite young and thought that was a great very futuristic back then. That was like, I read that at around the same age and thought that was super cool. So,
Yeah, I'm into the films. I'm not so into reading sci-fi, but I've seen
no,
Blade Runner,
yeah,
and I'm all over the sci-fi films.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
what about a habit?
Um, a habit. I would say just probably steps, honestly. I make sure I get at least 8 or 9,000 a day. I just make sure, even if I'm at my desk all day, because for me, movement just makes me feel better, just makes me feel stronger, and I just feel better. Like I feel terrible if I don't do that. So, yeah, movement.
Yeah, and as we talked about earlier, that is a great way to push away the decline of metabolism.
Yeah, it
and
is.
and actually, I didn't bring it up because I just didn't get around to it. But there's this photo of someone who's a 40-year-old. You may have seen it, like a 40-year-old triathlete, and a 70-year-old triathlete, and then a 74-year-old inactive person. Have you seen this photo?
No, I have not seen it.
So it looks like this. So this is a cross section.
Oh,
This is a cross section of the femur. Oh, an email came through.
oh, I think I have seen that.
Yeah.
I think I have seen that.
In
Yeah.
the middle is someone that doesn't lift or sorry, isn't active. So the dark
Yeah.
part is the muscle and the white part is the fat. And then above here is a 40-year-old triathlete, and this is a 70-year-old triathlete. So as you can see, there's not much difference between the 40-year-old and 70-year-old, but the
Yeah.
difference between the person that is inactive is just massive.
Massive.
And if there's any more reason to get your steps and lift your weights, it's that, because not only is that
Yeah.
health and metabolism boosting, it's to come back to being robust, being anti-fragile, not falling, because unfortunately, for example, my nana or grandma is 90 and she had a fall, and she was hospitalized for so long that she basically lost her ability to walk because there was so much atrophy from her being bedridden in the time that she had to recover from a fall. And it's difficult because she's 90. You can't just say, well, Nan, you should have lifted some weights. But,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we really do have to start earlier. And, I want to thank
Yeah.
you for your social posts that you make on Instagram, and, all the work that you do
Thank you.
encouraging people, especially women, to lift. It's super
Thank you.
important, for them to be around, to have a high quality of life. And, if there isn't people pushing resistance training like yourself and pushing a healthier lifestyle, then, it's just so easy to fall into doom scrolling, not going to the gym, and just kind of like wasting your life away. So,
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. If people do want to follow you, find you, connect with you, work with you, how can they find you?
Instagram is probably the best place. Michaela Bentley Fitness. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your experience with what you do and with what you do with your clients. It's been a great chat, and hopefully we have, once again, convinced people to lift some weights.
Let's go. Thanks, Brock. I
Right.
appreciate it.
Thanks for coming
It's a
on.
pleasure. Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you.